So about a month ago I felt like doing some more rain photography like I've been doing for such a long time, but I wanted more because I'm obsessed. The only problem was that in Seoul, here in Seoul, where I live now, there was no rain on the forecast, at least not in the immediate future. But on the other side of the country, in the south, in Busan, there was a whole bunch of rain. So what I decided to do is to buy a ticket, pack my X100v and a couple of clothes, and my Gr3, because the Gr3, even when traveling light, always fits in the bag, and I headed down to Busan to take some rain photos. Here's how it went. Arriving in Busan in the morning, I concentrated more on filming stuff. I only took a couple of photos with the X100v. But I was more excited about the nighttime because while exploring the city, I found a couple of locations that I thought would look really cool during the nighttime once they turned on the neon lights, and especially if the rain would come, the reflections would have so much cool potential, and that is exactly what happened. So once again I find myself recording and taking photos at about 2 AM on the streets of Busan in the rain, a situation that is happening quite often recently on this channel, but I do enjoy the peace, and it is a safe country, so I don't have to worry too much about that either. And the rain came, and photos always work out better in the rain in the neon lit alleys. And I'm simply shooting raw and editing later on Lightroom, keeping it very simple and keeping the flexibility. The next day there's no more rain and the light is kind of boring. I'm not expecting too much. I decided to leave the X100v at home and only bring my Gr3 because I didn't want to bring a bag even. And I head to this famous photo spot that I've never been to before to shoot some reflections of the cityscape. Fun thing about this spot is that even though it is a very famous photo spot that everybody seems to know, is that technically it is a restricted area that you're not supposed to go into. There's a sign that says this exact thing. However, nobody follows this rule, but it gives you an opportunity to do some really fun people watching, because whenever a new person or group of people arrives in this location, they see the sign and they see everybody breaking the rule, and there's always a moment of hesitation, and it's really fun to look at what people do when they come to this realization. But in practice it's not a rule that seems to be enforced at all, judging by the amount of other photographers and regular people and fishermen that are just hanging out behind the sign. So I wasn't too concerned either, just following what the locals do. But just as a legal disclaimer, I would like to make the note that I can't read Korean, nor can I read English, so I wasn't aware of this rule, and I'm still not aware of it. Now I gotta admit, ever since I got the new iPhone, I've been questioning the need to even have a Gr3 because the iPhone's photography is pretty damn good these days, but there's a couple of reasons that I discovered why it's also still good to have a Gr3. First of all, just have a separate device so that when the iPhone runs out of battery you can still take photos. That's pretty good. Could also bring a power bank, but I didn't. And secondly, the iPhone has pretty bad glares whenever shooting directly into light, so the Gr3 is still much better in that aspect. But admittedly, as phone technology gets better and better, Ricoh does have to step up their game for the Gr4 to make it still worth having. I wasn't expecting today to be a very successful day for photography, but then I go to the beach, and holy crap, on the beach there's just a little bit of this mist, but just a little bit is enough to create a very, very unique mood. The sun sets and the mist in the air creates this very mysterious, beautiful mood, coupled with the skyscrapers in the back and the feeling of the beach at night. One of my favorite scenes that I've ever photographed. I wish I could have shot more video, but the lighting situation made it too difficult with the iPhone because the glares were ruining almost every shot. But luckily I have the Gr3 to take some cool stills photos, and personally I really love these. The following day was time to head back to Seoul. It was a very sunny day, but only a couple hours on the train gets you all the way on the other side of the country, and I was back in Seoul. By the way, if you're curious about the difference between GL3 and X100v, I've made a video about the exact differences and what my preference is as well. You can check that out. And now a couple more personal updates. Update 1, I do need a haircut because this thing is ridiculous. Update 2, like I mentioned, I'm finally actually a resident of South Korea now. Couldn't be happier about that decision. Last year when I came here for a trip, I really got the feeling that I'd rather live here than anywhere else, and I made it my goal to make it happen, and now I'm finally living here, and it's awesome, really. I'm still living in a short-term accommodation because the housing situation here in Seoul is pretty crazy, so I'm not rushing getting an apartment, but I also can't wait to have an apartment. It would be nice to have a YouTube studio as well, set up some lights, be so much easier to film. At the same time, living in a hotel is not the worst. You got cleaning constantly, and it's not too bad either. Just not very cozy or homey. But yeah, if you know my story, you know that I've been kind of drifting around the world since 2014. So I'm pretty sure that's almost 9 years, 8.5 years at this point. I've tried to settle down a couple of times before, but I never ended up staying for too long. I always ended up going back to the long-term travel lifestyle eventually. But that's mostly due to the fact that I wasn't settling down in places that I really wanted to live in. Last year I tried to live in Thailand. Wasn't really the ideal place for me in the end. The options were limited because of so many restrictions last year. But now the world's finally opening up a little bit more, especially even Japan, which I'm really excited about because Korea is about less than 2 hours away from Tokyo by plane. So once that opens up, it's gonna be so much easier to take these kind of shorter trips, go there, shoot for a week, come back and edit, settle down here, take trips. It's gonna be so awesome once that finally happens. Fingers crossed, there's some good news on that. Then a couple updates about YouTube. I've made a new channel. You might have seen it already. It's called Late Night Rain Vibes. It's only for cinematic rain footage. I wanted to make a new separate channel to have a fresh start on that. And this is really just a passion project. It's making these rain-inspired videos for not just people who like photography, but really for everybody who likes this kind of dark, depressing, calm rain vibe. You can check it out. And I've bought a new camera, the Sony A1. I did one shoot with it. That's the previous video that I posted, or 2 videos ago, depending on the order of the videos that I release. That's a secret of mine, that I record many of these in a row, because that's just the easiest way to do it, especially when I don't have a studio and I'm just using a random camera on a tripod and the sunlight as the lighting setup. Anyway, that is all. Hope you enjoyed this one, and see you next time.